Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror and mystery in film, television, books, and in popular culture. Well, greetings, everybody. Welcome to another show. My name is Bruce Markison, and as always, I'm joined by co-host and producer Tracy Asteria. Tracy, how are you doing this week?
Doing pretty good, Bruce. Getting used to the fall feeling in the air. We're getting really close to the end of September, and it's definitely feeling like fall now. So, how's everything going with you? What's it like in your end of town?
Well, the temperatures are still in the 70s most days, but it's a lot cooler. We had, just like you guys, brutally hot summer, and we've had some beautiful days, beautiful nights for ghost tours.
hmm
So the weather's been really good for that. And you start to think about, Halloween is fast approaching. It's really not that far away. And when you get these crisp fall evenings, you definitely start thinking about the Halloween season, no doubt.
Oh, absolutely. And it's been getting darker, like by 7 o'clock. It is dark out, which is just mind boggling. It's so hard to get used to.
Yeah, that only contributes to the Halloween feeling, no question about that. So, Tracy, on this week's episode, kind of exciting. We're going to do something a little bit different, and it's going to start a series for us. We're going to be presenting the first in a series that we are calling Creature Features Monster Movies. This is an idea that you came up with, and I think it's great. What we're going to do here is we will be looking at subgenres of horror films over time that deal with a specific kind of monster or other supernatural being. Everything from vampires and werewolves to Frankenstein monsters to mummies, witches, all sorts of stuff. And in this episode, the first of this series, which we hope will go on for quite a while, we will be offering a retrospective on some of the best films that involve the theme of ghosts. So that's how we're going to get started. So you came up with this idea. What prompted this?
Oh my goodness. I There are so many films out there that I haven't seen, and I've kind of been grouping them on my little lists that I keep
Hmm.
of movies I've got to see. And I just kind of like noticed a trend, there's like all these witch type movies, ghost movies, hauntings, demonic possessions. Like there's just so many of them. I thought it would be really great to kind of claw in some of the best ones and just kind of like talk about them. Some of them I haven't seen, but you have seen. So it would be really great to kind of share thoughts on some of these different movies.
Well, it's a great idea. It motivates me to see some of these again. I've seen some of them in the past, but along the way, it's also going to motivate both of us to watch movies that we haven't previously seen. So it's going
Right.
to force us to do a little bit of prep work, but it's a fun type of prep work, no question of that. A little bit of history before we get started on this topic, Tracy. So we're trying to determine the first ghost themed feature film. And for some help on this, one of the best guys out there, especially silent era films, is Gary Rhodes. We've had Gary on, I think, 3 times on the program. He is a great resource on all things horror, but especially the early era, the silent era. So Gary told me that the first movie to deal with ghosts as a theme is the 1896 French film. And I'll try to pronounce it with my crude French. In French, it is called Le Manoir du Diable. Translated to English, that is the Haunted Castle, also known in English by the alternate title of House of the Devil. So this 1896 film is regarded as the first feature film to include ghosts. The film's story obviously involves a haunted castle where the devil, along with phantoms, witches, and ghosts, appear and disappear. Now, this silent film was all of 3 minutes, which doesn't sound much by our standards, but that was considered substantial for this early time in film history. This is 1896, so it's not even 20th century. This movie, The Haunted Castle, also is groundbreaking in its use of special effects to create a supernatural story. was the first film to feature a transformation involving a ghost. So this is where this subgenre got started. 1896, Le Manoir du Diable, The Haunted Castle. Now, slowly over time, ghosts became central themes to horror movies, though a lot of the early ones, especially in the early part of the talking picture era, they were done with a comedic tone rather than a serious one. So comedy was a big part of it early on. But that would eventually change. I think spurred on in part by the breakout of horror from Universal Studios during the 1930s. Of course, a lot of those were physical monster films like Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy. But that did eventually lead to a number of ghost themed films in the 1940s. And with our list today, that's the decade that we're going to pick up with. Now, we have chosen 8 films that we think are especially good and representative of this era. There are many films we could have chosen. There are a lot of movies that we had to leave out because we couldn't include them all. We're not going to do a 6-hour show. We try to keep this to about an hour, a little bit longer. So we left out movies like Vincent Price, House on Haunted Hill. One movie that we could have done, which I think is one of the greats, is certainly a top 10 ghost film, and that's The Changeling. But we already did a full show on that, so we wanted to do some new material here. So we left The Changeling out. I gave a lot of consideration to Ghost Story, the movie that came out in the early 80s based on Peter Straub's terrific novel. That just missed the cut. And there's more recent films. We could have done Oculus, Mike Flanagan movie that he did several
Right.
years ago. So there were some tough picks, but ultimately we boiled it down to 8 other movies. We're going to tackle them in chronological order, and they do kind of represent different eras. Now, there are a couple of cases where we picked more than one movie from the same decade. In fact, there's one year where we picked 2 movies because both are absolute classics. But we did try to spread them out across horror film history. So the first film, Tracy, that we're going to discuss is a classic from 1945. It's called The Uninvited. It's a production of Paramount Pictures. And it's really one of the better horror movies of the 40s. So The Uninvited was adapted from a 1942 novel written by an Irish author named Dorothy McCardle. And the movie stars Ray Milland and Ruth Hussey as a brother and sister who have purchased a Gothic mansion on the English coast. And they're at first thrilled to have acquired the house because they got it at a ridiculously low price, really a bargain price. Of course, there's always a catch when you get a house at a low price. There must be something wrong. And this brother and sister, they become alarmed when they discover that this beautiful mansion, seaside mansion, has a bizarre history, including tragic events within its walls. Now, this is an interesting movie in that it's kind of groundbreaking, too. Earlier films that dealt with haunted houses or alleged haunted houses, like The Old Dark House, which was a dark comedy from 1932, movies like that, these early haunted house films relied heavily on comedy. There was a lot of hijinks, there was a lot of physical comedy, that kind of thing. The Uninvited's not a comedy. It really represented Hollywood's first attempt at a serious film centered on a house alleged to be haunted, and turns out it is haunted. Now, the story that we have here, unsuspecting folks, nice brother and sister, they buy this house, get it at a bargain price. And of course, they are stunned to determine or discover that, yeah, it is actually haunted. So the story itself is a conventional one. It's been done over and over and over. But really, at the time, this kind of a serious story was considered groundbreaking, really was the first of its kind. Now, in watching the movie, it is pretty slow for our modern day horror tastes. It's not a film like some of the haunted house movies we're going to talk about later,
Mhm.
like The Conjuring, which have, a faster pace, more action. This movie does not have that. It is slow paced, especially for about the first half, two-thirds of the movie. But I think the slow pacing is overcome or counteracted by the really foreboding and moody atmosphere that is established. Some beautiful photography, but also very eerie photography, especially on the seaside. And the acting is first rate. I mean, you talk about Ray Milland, he was a very fine actor for many years. Now, later in his career, he made some questionable horror choices. You know, he did the movie Frogs, and then he did with Rosie Greer, the rather ridiculous comedy horror film, The Thing with Two Heads. But this was not a questionable choice. The Uninvited, very serious, well done, artistic movie. And Milan is very, very good in this. It is really considered a classic of the genre. It's a film that contemporary directors have praised. For example, Martin Scorsese and Guillermo del Toro have both placed The Uninvited among their most frightening horror films of all time. So those are two pretty good sources there. Scorsese and del Toro, they like the film. They've been influenced by it. For younger fans, younger generations, The Uninvited, probably not very frightening, given what we have seen from horror over the last 50 years and really the last 20 years, how extreme some of the violence, the gore, some of the frights, how extreme that's become. But The Uninvited, it does have this subtle, old-fashioned touch that I think makes it appealing to fans of older generations. Again, it's not an exciting film. It's not a film filled with jump scares. It's a different film from a different era, but I think it can still be appreciated by at least people like ourselves.
Mhm.
Maybe the younger fans will never buy into it, but I think fans 40s and older, I think they can get some enjoyment from this. It's really an excellent movie. I give it 3.5 stars. This classic black and white effort from the mid 1940s.
Oh,
So,
awesome. Um,
yeah.
so Bruce, where would we be able to watch that one? Just because it's like from the 40s, is that something that we can find on like Tubi or Crave or another app like that? Do you know?
You know, I'm trying to remember where I watched it. I believe it is available on streaming. It might even be available
Mhm.
on YouTube, but I don't
Okay.
remember specifically where it was. I don't think it's hard to find. It's also a movie that Turner Classic has shown quite a bit, and I think they've
Mhm.
shown it a few times, you know, during their October Halloween marathon. So it's really not a movie that's hard to locate.
Oh, awesome. Okay. I will have to put that on my watch list.
All right, so that was our first movie from 1944. And now we're going to jump ahead about 20 years to really a classic film from the early 60s. And Tracy's going to
Mhm.
tackle this one for us.
You're right. So our next film, it takes us into one of cinema's most unsettling houses. This is where the walls actually seem to breathe, and the terror comes from not what you see, but how it makes you feel. And we're talking about Robert Wise's 1963 classic, The Haunting. So, The Haunting was released in 1963 and is considered one of the finest haunted house films ever made. The movie is based on Shirley Jackson's 1959, I think, her novel called The Haunting of Hill House. So, it tells a story of Dr. Markway, who is a researcher determined to prove the existence of the supernatural. He assembles a very small group of people to study the infamous Hill House, which is an isolated mansion with a very dark and tragic past. So, among this group of people, there is a lady named Eleanor, Theo, and Luke. And each of these guests, they have kind of like their own really unique abilities, which makes them a really good fit for this type of experiment. So I wanted to kind of focus on Julie Harris's character, Eleanor. Now, I thought her performance was like excellent. It's so heartbreaking. And she's actually invited to Hill House because of her psychic sensitivity. And almost immediately, she begins to form this really weird connection with the house. She hears voices and knocks and whispers. And for me, because I actually just watched this for the first time the other night, it was really hard for me to tell at times if it was the house that was tormenting her or if she was just starting to descend into like this terrible path of madness. But what I found what was really great about The Haunting is its reliance on psychological tension. It didn't actually show actual ghosts, which is what I was kind of expecting to see, but it was created just through like sound and shadows. And some of the camera work was like really cool. The knocks on the walls, the whispers in the house, the scratching at the doors. And like these really weird camera angles, they distorted things like some of the statues and just the hallways. It really did make it seem like the house was alive. Like even some of the doors in some of the scenes, like it was actually, you could see it moving like somebody was breathing. And I thought it, I thought it was excellent, like a really good horror film that's been made. And I noticed that it wasn't like a huge box office hit at the time, but it's really grown in the reputation because Stephen King has praised both the Shirley Jackson novel that this was based on and Robert Wise's adaptation. And he figures it's like a cornerstone of the horror industry. It's subtle, it's chilling, deeply psychological, and it remains proof that in horror, the imagination can be the scariest monster of all. And I gave this one 4 stars. I absolutely adored it. And, just a little plug here. If viewers haven't seen Mike Flanagan's miniseries from 2018, The Haunting of Hill House, check that one out too. It's not quite the same, but it has the same kind of feel. And that's what I actually saw prior to this movie. So I give this one 4 stars. I thought it was excellent. What did you think, Bruce?
Oh yeah, this is a great one. You make important point. It didn't do that well. It did okay at the box office,
Mhm.
but it drew a lot of criticism for being a little bit too slow, maybe too psychological. Some critics felt it was a little hard to follow exactly what was going on. There was this strange relationship between the Claire Bloom and Julie Harris characters.
Mhm.
So it was not immediately accepted by the critics or the fans, but over time, it has become one of the top films in this subgenre. Whether you're talking ghosts or haunted house films, it falls into both categories. Uh, I remember I saw this when I was young, and I didn't really appreciate it because I did feel it was too slow. But with a greater appreciation of horror, understanding now what they were doing here, I really have a much better appreciation for the movie. The special effects that they use are kind of sparing, but really well done. The pulsating walls. I don't know how they did
Yes.
that, but it looks realistic and it's really kind of a creepy thing.
Yeah.
As you said, great camera work, unusual angles, which create some distortions. Yeah,
Mhm.
this is top notch. I agree with you. 4 stars. It's a tremendous film. Of these movies here, I didn't pick, and I don't think you picked which one was the best. But you could make an argument for The Haunting. It's certainly in the
Mhm.
conversation. It's a film that has lasted in terms of its impact. In fact, it's grown in impact over time, and I think it's going to continue to maintain a high level of interest from fans of classic horror.
Oh,
Now,
absolutely.
yeah,
Did you get a chance to read the novel that this movie was based on?
I did. I read it after I'd seen the film a few
Mhm.
times. I was actually disappointed by the novel. I didn't find it all that great. And I know it's considered a classic and it's drawn a lot of praise. Shirley Jackson considered, a legendary writer.
Mhm.
For whatever reason, it just didn't hit home with me. And maybe it's because I saw the movie first and the movie had such a great impact and the book ended up being a bit of a letdown. So for me, it was not the book that carries this. It's definitely the film.
Oh, awesome. I have not read the book, but I think I might check out the local library and see if I can find it because I would love to read it and kind of do a little mental comparison.
Yeah, you might enjoy it more than I do. Most people think it's great, and for some reason, it just didn't hit a chord with me.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So The Haunting from 1963, a four-star film, and I agree, four stars as well. It is without question a classic. And then that brings us to a film that came out 10 years later. And it's a film that I think has a connection to The Haunting in some ways. And this might be the most underappreciated film on our list of 8 movies. From 1973, it's The Legend of Hell House. So this is based on a terrific novel written by the great writer Richard Matheson. And the film is really kind of a supercharged version of The Haunting. More violence, more gore, sex added to the story, kind of representative of 1970s cinema and some of the changes
Mhm.
that we saw from the Hauntings era. Of course, that came out early 60s. So you can see the differences just 10 years and the impact they have on horror movies. This movie is also done in full color as opposed to black and white. And the film tells the story of a team of paranormal investigators who have dared to enter the dreaded Belasco house, haunted by the ghost of a serial killer who dealt in sadism. Now, the earlier house that you mentioned with the haunting, Hill House, that had a checkered past, but the
Mhm.
Belasco house is really a place of nightmares. So the four investigators, actually three investigators and one of their spouse, they're charged with coming up with evidence that the house is haunted or evidence that it's not haunted. The person who is financing this says if they can prove conclusively that it's haunted or not haunted, they will earn £100,000 for their effort. I have no idea what £100,000 would be worth today, much less in 1973, but I have to think it's a pretty significant amount of money.
Yes.
And they're motivated to go in. It's enough money that they're going to go in, even though this house has a terrible, terrible history. In order for them to collect the money, they do have to remain in the house for a full week, and they've got to come up with a determination if it's haunted or if it's not haunted. Now, in writing both the novel and then the screenplay, so Matheson did the screenplay for the movie, he based part of the story on the life of the infamous occultist Aleister Crowley. So that gives you a sense of what's going on. And Matheson's novel, much like the movie, is full of violence and bloodshed. Now he did tone it down a little bit for the feature film, but still for that era, it's pretty highly charged. One of my favorite actors of all time, Roddy McDowall, headlines the cast. He is a medium. He is named Benjamin Franklin Fisher, and he actually survived an earlier investigation of the Belasco house. And in that investigation, 8 of the scientific team, the researchers, were killed. He's the only survivor. At first, McDowell's character of Benjamin Fisher is pretty reserved, quiet, almost seems uninterested in what's going on. But then he becomes more vocal, he becomes more aggressive as the story proceeds, and he really starts to take a more active approach to the investigation. And this is one of McDowell's best performances. I
Mhm.
mean, he is outstanding here. Another good performer is a young Pamela Franklin. She plays the mental medium Florence Tanner, who, even though she's very young and kind of appears timid in appearance, but is very forceful in her investigation. And she's willing to take on both Fisher and Dr. Barrett. He is the physicist and the skeptic who is the leader of the group. She's not going to let them dictate to her what is going on. And so she really takes an aggressive approach. And I think this is one of Franklin's best performances. It also turned out to be one of her final efforts because she decided to retire from acting not that long after. She was very talented, had a really great career ahead of her, but for whatever reason, decided to move on from Hollywood. Now, the movie is beautifully filmed, full color, and it has one of the best soundtracks in horror history. The musical score, it starts right off the bat. You see the four people getting ready to walk into the Belasco house. It's a foggy night, and this kind of thumping, pulsating music is behind them. It really draws you in, and the score throughout is fantastic. The special effects are excellent for the time period, really, I think ahead of their time, and they help bring this house, the Belasco house, to life. Now, I should also mention this is a little bit of a controversial film. In one scene, Franklin's character, Florence Tanner, actually has sex with one of the mansion's ghosts. And that was almost unheard of in previous horror films. I don't remember that happening in any mainstream horror film before this. So that was kind of shocking for people of that time period.
Mhm.
And as it turns out, Tanner's decision is not really the wisest either, because it really does put her in grave danger. The one weakness to this film is the ending, which is a little bit on the lackluster side. Now, there's a great speech from Roddy McDowall's character where he confronts the ghost, shouts, really willing to take him on. But then he comes to this kind of wacky conclusion. And I'm a little hesitant to say, because I don't want to give things away, but I think it's important to note that he determines that one of the reasons why this Belasco, this serial killer, this sadist, was so violent and so angry, and it sounds weird, it's because he was very short.
Oh my
He's
goodness.
like, yeah. He actually, it's revealed that he had prosthetic legs, which made him appear like he was 6'5", but in reality, he was like under 5 feet, and he had a complex about this, and that apparently was at least one of the motivating factors in him becoming this deranged killer. It's kind of a goofy conclusion. I don't know. I don't know if this was Matheson's idea or if somebody forced this on him, but that's that was kind of a letdown. It was almost comedic, kind of a goofball thing that happened in a movie that had really no other comedy to it. So that was a bit
Wow.
strange. Yeah.
What an interesting twist. I've not seen it, and oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I would never expect something like that from a horror film.
Yeah.
That's rather bizarre.
I mean, it's a twist, but
Yeah.
I don't know that it's necessarily the most effective. If they'd come up with a little better explanation, to me, this would have been a full-fledged classic. You'd put it up there with The Haunting, you put it up there with The Changeling, some other great films we've talked about. Even with that ending and that strange revelation, it's still a very fine, very entertaining movie. I highly recommend it. It's not that well known. There's a lot of people that probably haven't seen it, but it is available on streaming. I think it's on multiple streaming sources, and it's certainly worth taking a look at least once, if not more. So I go 3.5 stars for The Legend of Hell House. Underrated, very, very good film. Could have been a classic, but falls just short.
Wow. I'm not sure how to follow that up, Bruce.
Well, you're going to have to, because you're next on the list. We moved 9 years from 1973 to 1982. This is a movie that I was lucky enough to see in theaters. And of course, I've seen it on television as well. And it's a movie that you're familiar with. Tell us what it is.
So I'm going to say 2 words. They're here.
Yep.
Those 2 words cemented the movie Poltergeist as one of the most unforgettable ghost films of all time, where suburbia and the supernatural collided in terrifying fashion. So this movie was released in 1982, and I actually saw it probably about a year after its release. So if you think back in the old school days, it was before VHS. It was on one of those giant, it looked like a record that slid into this player. I don't even know what it was called. And that's how I watched it on TV. So that goes way, way back. But anyway, the Poltergeist tells the story of the Freeling family whose comfortable suburban life is upended when their youngest daughter, Carol Ann, begins communicating with spirits through the family's TV set. What starts as playful curiosity escalates into sheer horror when Carol Ann is pulled into another dimension, forcing the family to seek help from a team of paranormal investigators and the eccentric medium Tangina. Tangina. Oh my goodness. Poltergeist was unique in its blend of heartfelt family drama and supernatural imagery. So the Freeling family, they felt relatable. They felt like every normal American family. And that's kind of what made you sympathize with them and what made their ordeal even more terrifying. Audiences were provided with some of the creepiest images that I can recall. You know, you have that clown doll, and I'm not a big fan of clowns, but the clown doll that comes to life, creates havoc. Then you have the skeletal corpses erupting from the ground in a swimming pool. You have that monstrous tree, the glowing closet vortex. And that's just to name a few of the really creepy scenes that really stick with you. And Heather O'Rourke, who plays Carol Ann, she became a horror icon when she was just 6 years old. She was very angelic and had that really innocent kind of presence. And she was kind of like immersed into this terror that surrounded her. You have Jo Beth Williams, Craig T. Nelson. They were amazing. They gave super great performances. They were genuine. And you couldn't help but feel attached to them because they were caught up in like unimaginable circumstances going on. At first, it was exciting. The mom was, you know, pushing chairs in the kitchen and watching all of them slide. And it was just, from something that was so exciting turned terrifying so fast. And another really notable character, her name was Tangina. She was the medium, and she was played by Zelda Rubinstein, and she was amazing. She had a very distinct voice, but she had such a commanding presence for her. It was surreal. And the first time that she kind of was presented to the family, the way that she spoke to the mother, Jo Beth Williams, um, just says, "Come down to my level and talk to me here." And she was just like, it was iconic. I just loved it. And for me, when we talk about mediums and like horror genre movies, she is the first person that comes to my mind because I
Mm,
think she was the first one that I would remember from seeing in a film like
yeah.
this. But, this movie was a huge success. It grossed over $120 million worldwide, making it one of the most profitable films of that year, and it actually spawned several sequels. I wanna say there were 3 movies altogether, I wanna say.
Yeah.
And just to kinda, like, touch on something because we've talked about this before, but, there's, like, this infamous poltergeist curse. So, since the release of Poltergeist in '82, there were rumors about, the curse of the surrounding cast and crew. Much of it comes from the tragic and untimely deaths that had happened either during filming or after filming. You have the young girl, Dominic Dunn, who played Dana, the eldest daughter. She passed away tragically. And then Heather O'Rourke, who played Carol Ann, she also died unexpectedly in 1988 at the age of 12. And she had just finished filming Poltergeist 3. So the back-to-back tragedies, they just kind of fed into this cursed project idea, and fans are very quick to mention that everything was cursed because they used real skeletons in that scene from the first movie instead of like plastic skeletons, and that was just costs. But that was creepy, and I didn't know how much later on that they were real skeletons, so I just get that creeps thinking about it.
Yeah.
But it really did. It had groundbreaking special effects, super iconic moments, and it is such a legendary ghost film. And I gave Poltergeist 4 stars as well.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal movie. It's one I said a moment ago that I saw it in theater on the big screen, which really gives you a special appreciation. There's lots of action. It's not slow paced like some of the earlier films we talked about. It's very much from this modern era of horror. And I think in some ways it sort of changed the way that haunted house movies were done. You talk about the special effects, terrific, groundbreaking stuff that was done in that movie, way, way ahead of its time. Tremendous performances. The two elder Freelings, Jo Beth Williams and Craig T. Nelson, both outstanding. And then you think about the kids. There were three children, I believe, total in the family, and two of the actresses, as you mentioned, met really terrible fates. Heather O'Rourke, years later, had a disease that was badly misdiagnosed, and that led to her passing. And Dominique Dunne, in one of the worst tragedies in Hollywood history, was murdered by an ex-boyfriend. He was abusive, and he was just an awful person. I think he's still in prison
Oh, wow.
all these years later. Her father, Dominic Dunne, very high-powered attorney, really became motivated to kind of work on cases, mysteries like like this involving
Mhm.
a killing, a murder. And he was certainly greatly affected by it. Her brother, Dominique's brother, Griffin Dunn, was in American Werewolf in London and has become a
Right.
really successful director. He was very close to Dominique. I think she was going to be a huge star. She had been in an episode of Hill Street Blues where she actually played an abused young woman. And as it turns out, the bruises that she had for that episode had been inflicted on her in real life.
Oh my
And
god.
yeah, so, she had this really unfortunate history with these boyfriends and the guy who ultimately did take her life. But you could see that she had a great presence on the screen. There's one scene toward the end where she's dropped off from a car. I can't remember if it's her friends drop her off or it's a taxi. And she gets out and she looks at all the chaos around their house. All these things are swirling in air, and she lets out this incredible exclamation, "What's happening?" I mean, the delivery of that line still sends chills up my spine when I see it. So I think she was going to be a real success. And of course, Heather O'Rourke, was even younger when she
Mhm.
died, and who knows what successes that she might have had. Um, she was, of course, very much a child actor, and we know that sometimes child actors, they don't have the same success as adults that they do as kids. But she had great talent, she had great charisma. Who knows how high she would have been able to achieve as an actress. And it's one of the sad things about the movie is whenever you see this film and you see these two young actresses knowing what would happen to them, in the case of Dominique Dunne, very shortly after filming, and then Heather O'Rourke just a few years later, you're always reminded of what their fates were, and it is kind of sad. It doesn't detract from the movie. I mean, I think their performances are good, and they certainly add to the film. It's a powerful movie in a lot of ways. It's done at a high level, sophisticated. There is one controversy, Tracy, though, that I think still exists to this day. Who actually was the director?
Right.
We had Harrison Smith on, and he really felt this was a Steven Spielberg production. He didn't feel that Tobe Hooper really directed the movie, even though Hooper is officially credited as the director.
Mhm.
Some of the actors who were in the film say, no, Hooper was the main guy. He got some advice, he got some help from Spielberg, but I know Harrison Smith and others are skeptical of that. I think it's safe to say both Hooper and Spielberg contributed to it, and whoever did the most work, it turned out great. That's the bottom line. This is a
Exactly.
phenomenal, phenomenal film, and I agree, 4 stars for Poltergeist.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. And the screenplay, I believe, was written by Steven Spielberg. I believe. I wanna say that he did the screenplay. Do you know?
Could be. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no question that he did contribute to it.
Mhm.
But I do think that Hooper, based on what some of the actors have said, I think he was heavily involved. I mean, if you want to consider them co-directors, fine, but I think Hooper and Spielberg both played a good part in developing what is one of the classics, not just of ghost films, but all horror films that have ever been made. So we both agree 4 stars for Poltergeist. All right, that's our first 4 films. We still have 4 to go, a couple from the 90s, and then we have a couple from the 2000s. We'll take a short break, and when we continue, we'll have more discussion, creature features, monster movies, as we delve into the world of ghosts and spirits. Stay with us. We'll be right back on the Ghostly Gallery. Welcome back to the Ghostly Gallery podcast. We continue the first in our series of creature features, monster movies, and we're looking at films that have featured ghosts, ghost stories, haunted houses. We've gotten through the first 4 films. We still have 4 to go. During the break, we did have a chance to check on that Steven Spielberg factoid. He, in fact, was one of the writers, one of 3 writers that contributed to the script for Poltergeist. And really, he was the principal writer. The story, a lot of that was his idea. So, yes, Spielberg, writer, and officially Tobe Hooper, the director. All right, we now move to the 1990s for our next film. Another one that I was lucky enough to see in the theater, and I've seen it many times on television since then. It is certainly a modern day masterpiece, and we'll turn things over to Tracy to find out the identity of that film.
Okay. Well, for our next film, quite a few ghost films have left audiences stunned as M. Night Shyamalan's film The Sixth Sense. So, a movie that blends supernatural chills with raw human emotion and a very interesting end twist. So, this movie was released in August of 99, and The Sixth Sense became a cultural phenomenon. This story follows child psychologist Malcolm Crowe, played by Bruce Willis, who begins working with Cole, who is a troubled boy played by Haley Joel Osment. Cole reveals that he sees the dead, and not just in passing, but he also experiences their suffering, their unfinished business, and their desperate attempts to communicate. So, what sets this film apart is how it combines horror and heartbreak. His relationship with Malcolm forms a really emotional story, which is the backbone of this movie. It leads to one of the most famous twist endings, an ending that just it makes you totally rethink the movie that you just watched. And I won't give it away in case anybody has not seen it, but it definitely reframes everything the audience thought that they knew about how this ended. And Haley Joel Osment's performance, he was incredible, especially as a child actor. I think he was probably, I want to say maybe 10 or 11 years old. His haunted eyes and fragile delivery of the iconic line, I see dead people. It earned him an Academy Award nomination. And Bruce Willis, he surprised, I think, a lot of movie viewers by playing Malcolm with such a very quiet vulnerability rather than giving off those action hero vibes, which he usually gives off. And it just shows you that he has such a range that he can perform in. And The Sixth Sense, it was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, which was very rare for a supernatural thriller. The film made $672 million worldwide on a $40 million budget, making it one of the most profitable horror films ever. And what's pretty cool about this is, you know, today, like a lot of the trailers that we see on TV, it kind of gives away a lot of the movie. So when you see the movie in the theater, it's kind of like, huh, well, I saw that in the trailer. This didn't do it. It relied heavily on secrecy. And the trailers didn't really reveal much, which only kind of fueled the whole twisted ending of this movie. And The Sixth Sense proves that ghost stories are both terrifying but tender, very sentimental at times, and reminds us that, some of the scariest hauntings around, they pertain to grief and loss. And for me, I really like this movie, and I gave this 4.5 stars.
It's a great movie, no
Yeah,
question. Bruce Willis, I think, really showed that not only could he be an action star and, a superstar, maybe in the vein of a Schwarzenegger, Stallone, but he could also handle serious acting. He really proved his mettle in that area with this performance. Haley Joel Osment, as you said, phenomenal. It's surprising that he has not really gone on to great success because he showed so
that's
much
right.
talent here. I guess he's still young enough that maybe that could still happen for him, but he nailed this role. Toni Collette as his mother is
That's
also
right.
great. She's a tremendous actress.
Hmm.
Even when you see this a second, third, fourth time, and the twist that's going to happen at the end,
Right.
it's still a good movie. There's still very well done scenes, dramatic scenes. For me, the best scene in the film is when Malcolm Crowe and the young boy are at the girl's wake at
Right.
her parents' house. And Haley Joel Osment's character, I forget his name. What was his name again in the movie?
Cole.
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 That's right.
Yeah.
So Cole actually brings with him a small box containing a video cassette, and he presents it to the father. And the father at first is like not really sure what's going on. Why are you giving
Mhm.
this to me during this kind of funeral, this wake? But he does pop it into the VCR and he takes a look. And the video shows the mother poisoning the young girl's soup.
Yeah.
And apparently, the young girl taped the mother doing this. And then, after she passed away, her ghost was able to communicate with Cole. He was able to find the tape and present it as evidence.
Mhm.
And then she is confronted during the wake with this, and she turns absolutely white because she realizes the jig is up. She's been found out. That was a complete shock. That was a stunning movie, a stunning scene, but really handled well. And in a movie that was filled with great scenes. There's a
Yes,
scene when
yes.
Cole and her mother are stuck in a traffic jam, and Cole knows that there's been an accident, somebody's been killed, and she's like, "How do you know that?" And he kind of starts to scare her because he is able to provide details of an accident that they can't physically see from where they are, but
Mhm.
he's already communicated with the ghost of one of the victims. There's a lot of great scenes, but those are two that really jump out. I love this one. From the moment I saw it in theaters, I'd heard great things. We'd heard all the reviews. We went and saw it
Mhm.
at the local theater in Oneonta, and we were not disappointed at all. It's another modern day masterpiece. I didn't go quite as far as you, but I did go 4 stars, and that's pretty darn good. So
Oh, yeah.
top notch, absolutely.
And this is one too that I'll say that we have to really, it's worth a multiple watch, because I think
Mhm.
every time I see it, always picking out new things. And, I think it's phenomenal. And that scene that you mentioned with Tony Collette and like his mom in the car, it was fascinating because through that conversation, he also relays information about the passing of her mother and
Hmm.
how they had been in a fight. And this just goes on to prove that he does have those kind of abilities to see dead people. And I think that kind of like turned everything around for his mom. Absolutely.
That classic line from Haley Joel Osment, it's been parodied many times,
Oh,
but in the
yes.
film, it's not comical in any way. I mean, he nails it. He does it in a very understated but chilling way. It's really effective.
Yeah.
It really did show his ability as a fine young actor. So a great movie. Now, The Sixth Sense brings us to another film that came out shortly thereafter, same year, 1999, and a film that also features a very good performance from a young child actor. But this is a movie that really doesn't get its full credit the way The Sixth Sense does. So our next film is Stir of Echoes, and it really should be rated just about as highly as The Sixth Sense. Stir of Echoes stars Kevin Bacon as a middle class telephone lineman who's living in Chicago. His name is Tom Wertzke. And he has a son, Jake, who also appears to have some ability to communicate with people that no one else can see, specifically ghosts. Early in the story, Tom attends a neighborhood party in his middle class neighborhood. There, he agrees to be hypnotized by his sister in law. And then soon after, he begins having these terrible hallucinations and nightmares, including visions of a ghostly girl around his house. Those visions, along with his son's claims of being able to communicate with a young missing girl named Samantha, motivate Tom to kind of investigate. And he's actually during a later session with his sister-in-law, where he goes under, he's hypnotized, and he is told to dig. So he starts digging incessantly in his own backyard and then in his basement as he frantically searches to solve the mystery behind this young girl and what exactly happened to her. Kevin Bacon has done a lot of horror movies over time. I think this is his best. He is terrific in the lead role. He is also matched by Catherine Irby. She is great as his supportive but concerned wife, Maggie. You know, there are times when she is really trying to help him, but there are also other times when she gets very exasperated with Tom, and she does a good job blending all of that. So I think this is Bacon's best performance in horror, and Irby, who's probably best known for Law and Order, does a great job in this movie too. And then there's this young actor who is kind of forgotten now because he never made another movie. He left the industry. Zachary David Cope. He is excellent as young Jake. He's a 5-year-old boy, and he plays this in such a believable and intelligent manner. He's phenomenal in the movie, so he does a good job as well. Tracy, here are a few notes of interest about Stir of Echoes. This is another movie based on the writing of the legendary Richard Matheson. Back in 1958, Matheson wrote a novel, A Stir of Echoes. So about 40 years later, Stir of Echoes makes it to the big screen. And well, that turned out to be worth the wait because while the novel is good, the film is even better. The movie also has some interesting references to horror history. There's a scene in which the Witzke's young son, Jake, is watching a movie from, I believe, either the late 50s or the 60s, The Mummy's Shroud. His mother tells him to turn the movie off. She's disturbed that he's watching horror films. So he switches the station and puts on Night of the Living Dead, which is even more frightening and even less appropriate for a 5-year-old child. Now, not only did Stir of Echoes come out shortly after the release of The Sixth Sense, but it also followed two other successful horror films at the box office. One of them is The Blair Witch Project, and the other is The Mummy, the one with Brendan Fraser. And the timing almost certainly hurt the box office sales for Stir of Echoes. But the initial reviews for the film were good, and the film's reputation has only grown over the past few decades. You look at this movie, it's wonderfully done. It's creepy, it's suspenseful. It has a mystery that you kind of can follow. You know something's happened to the young girl, probably not a good fate awaiting her, but you don't know exactly who is responsible for taking her away from the human world. And what's revealed at the end, great twist. The special effects are excellent, especially a dream scene. And this is when Tom is under hypnosis. And you see Thomas seated in a theater chair, and that chair elevates from the floor and begins to make its way toward the theater screen. It's almost like floating. It's way up in the air, and then it starts to get closer and closer to the big screen. Really cool effect. The film has the two major twists near the end of the film, neither one I saw coming. And there's also a final chilling scene as the Witskys are able to drive away from their Chicago home, which has been torn apart because of Tom's digging and tearing up floorboards and walls, and also because of all the violence that has taken place there. They start to look to life elsewhere, and as they're driving in the car, very interesting. It doesn't happen for too long, but it involves the young boy and involves some of the voices, the whispers that he is hearing in the neighborhood as they're driving away. Really effective finish to an outstanding film, and I give this one 4 stars as well. 4 stars for Stir of Echoes. Now, I know you've seen this one, Tracy. What do you think of it?
I loved it. It's been a number of years since I've seen it, and it's definitely worth a watch again. And I really do like Kevin Bacon, and I think this was a really great movie. And I have to agree, like it's definitely another 4-star. And you know me, like I don't usually dish out 4 stars, but I'm dishing them out left and right here tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kevin Bacon, he's great at playing an everyman, which he is
Yeah.
in this movie. And he's a guy, he realizes he's sort of a common everyman. His life is very ordinary. He hasn't achieved tremendous success. He's a telephone lineman. He's not making a lot of money. He's got one child. His wife reveals at the beginning of the movie that another child is on the way.
Mhm.
Um, he's a guy with flaws, but also he's a good guy. He realizes that these messages that he's been getting from being hypnotized, this is actually going to give him a chance to do something meaningful, worthwhile, and that is solve a mystery. And as it
Right.
turns out, it's the mystery of what happened to this young girl, how she was a victim, who the murderers were, who were the people that covered it up. And it's because of his determination, even though it's very unpleasant, these hallucinations and things that happen. He feels like his brain is jumping at times, but he perseveres. He goes through with it because he realizes he can do something really good and something meaningful. And it's great to see that uh, from Kevin Bacon. People always talk about, he's in every movie. He can be connected to every actor, but he's also a great actor too. And
He
I think he really
is.
shows that in this movie.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, he's another one of those actors that has such a range. And I think he's played in almost every single type of genre out there.
Yeah.
One of his most recent projects, bear with me, I think it's called The Bondsman. It's an Amazon Prime
Hmm.
miniseries. Um, he was great in it. Now, it didn't air for, like, more than 10 episodes, I don't think, and it didn't get picked up for an extra season, but it was comedy. It was like a horror comedy. It was pretty cool, and it's definitely worth a watch, but
Yeah.
it just shows he can do anything, even today, and he even dabbles in music. He's also a musician, so he's definitely multi-talented. Definitely a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, and he's a big part of the success of Stir of Echoes. If you haven't seen it, you should. It really deserves more credit than what it's gotten. All right, we'll jump ahead a few years to our next film, and this is the first from the 21st century, and maybe the best ghost themed film of the last 25 years, the 2002 hit The Ring. So it's based on a Japanese movie with a similar storyline. This is very much a psychological horror film with the story centered on an urban legend involving a mysterious videocassette tape. Supposedly, those who watch the tape will die within 7 days. And with such a premise, there is really a feeling of doom that accompanies this movie. So Naomi Watts stars as Rachel. She is a young journalist who begins to investigate this mysterious, sinister videotape that has allegedly led to the deaths of 4 teenagers. And again, according to the urban legend, anybody who watches it going to die 7 days later. When her son is exposed to the film, she becomes greatly concerned. She is forced to confront the situation head on and ultimately find a way to save her son while also doing battle with the evil spirit of Samara. Watts performs her role extremely well. She plays a likable, good-hearted character fighting against this really dreary backdrop, inevitable death, it seems. Every scene in the movie it's cloudy, it's cold. This is a movie that has this sense of foreboding that is pretty much there in every scene, start to finish. Watts is terrific. So are Martin Henderson and Brian Cox, great character actor. They all deliver very good performances in their starring roles. As I said, the atmosphere, very dark, very disturbing, as are the images contained on this sinister tape, this video cassette tape. And boy, in that one scene when that girl with the long black hair covering her face climbs out of the television set, I just about fell down in my living room watching that. Great special effects. I don't know how they did it, but really powerful, really frightening. I don't get scared by too many movies. There are a few, though, like Night of the Living Dead and a few others that got me the first time I saw it. And this movie I'd put in the same category.
Mm-hmm.
The Ring is powerful. It's a modern day classic, truly frightening. And it's one you probably should not watch by yourself, at least not the first time. Watch it with a few other folks, that might help. But whether you watch it by yourself or not, it's a 4-star film. 4 stars for The Ring. What do you think of this one, Tracy?
It was one of the scariest movies I think I've seen. Like, it left me with chills. There's just something about it, that tape, that girl crawling out of the TV. It's sent shivers down my spine. And I'll be honest, I've seen it twice and it still scares me. And I find it really hard to try to watch it again without turning it off, because it just leaves me with that sense of anxiety. It leaves me very anxious. And not a lot of movies do that, but this did. But I still give it 4 stars too. And it's along the same lines as The Grudge. It's another movie that's based off a Japanese movie. I feel the same way about that one too. It's another excellent movie, and it leaves me with that sense of I can't breathe. Like, it's definitely scary. Like, truly scary.
It's an uncomfortable watch, no question.
Yes,
And I've maybe seen it 2-3 times since I initially saw it. And I'm sort of like you. I'm a little hesitant to watch it again because it is so dark, so dire. And those scenes, the one in particular that I mentioned, it's really disturbing. So this one's a bit tough to take, but it is extremely well done. And if you think horror movies should scare people, well, this one does it and then some.
Yes.
All right, Tracy, one more film to go. It's our most recent from 2013. The film is The Conjuring. I know you've seen this, and as I recall, you like it, but give us more detail.
Yeah. So The Conjuring was released in 2013 and was directed by James Wan. And it quickly became one of the most talked about horror films of the time. It's based on the real life case files of paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are played by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, who are both excellent. So the story begins when the Perrin family moves into a very secluded farmhouse in the early 70s. And at first, life in the house seems really normal, but it doesn't take long before strange things start happening. The clocks, they all stop at 3:07 a.m. every night. The family dog refuses to even enter the house. And I believe there's 5 daughters. So all of the daughters, they report hearing whispers and they feel these unseen hands like tugging at their feet and mysterious clapping. Like they have like this clapping game for hide and seek, but sometimes there's clapping and they're not playing a game. So it's definitely very creepy. And as all of these disturbances escalate, the mother, Carolyn, becomes increasingly desperate. And she's the one that reaches out to the Warrens for help. And Ed and Lorraine Warren have been documenting supernatural occurrences like across the country. And they agree to investigate this farmhouse. But what they uncover is extremely terrifying. This house was once home to a woman named Bathsheba, and she was rumored to have practiced witchcraft. And she actually sacrificed her child to the devil before taking her own life. And Bathsheba's curse was anyone who tried to live on that land would face her wrath. And now she has her sights set on Carolyn and all of her children. So the Warrens attempt to cleanse the house through different means. They have an investigation team in there, but the entity, it proves to be so violent and lashing out during this investigation. Lorraine, so she not only is she a paranormal investigator, but she's also a clairvoyant. She experiences visions that nearly overwhelm her. And as Carolyn falls deeper under the spirit's influence, Ed is forced to attempt a very dangerous exorcism all by himself in a very unnerving showdown in the basement, in the cellar. So, in the end, Carolyn is freed from Bathsheba's control, and the family does survive, which is great. But the Warrens' work is far from over. And what makes The Conjuring so effective is it's not just like the storyline, but how it's told. Again, you have like this creepy atmosphere, you have really good scares, and just the sheer terror of anticipation. It's pretty cool camera work, doors creaking open by themselves. It's really, really well done. And behind the scenes, while this movie was actually being made, it had its own spooky reputation as well. Both the
Hmm.
cast and the crew reported strange occurrences while filming. And even the Perron family, they claimed to have felt a very eerie presence during production because they were on set for this. And the real Lorraine Warren even consulted on this film, and she experienced issues as well. So this was a huge box office hit, grossing over $320 million.
Hmm.
And it was only 20 million to make this movie, but the success launched an entire universe, including Conjuring sequels and other franchises such as Annabelle. So the Conjuring just didn't scare audiences. It turned the Warrens case files into one of horror's most enduring universes. And I'm a big fan of Ed and Lorraine Warren. I've read several books and I've tried to watch some of these films. I haven't seen the newest Conjuring one, which is the last one, Last Rites. But this one here, the very first one that sparked all of this, I think it's a modern horror classic, and I gave this one 4.5 stars.
Wow.
Now, you've seen it. What did you think, Bruce?
Well, I thought it was excellent. Look, it begins with Vera Farmiga, who's one of my 5 favorite horror actresses of all time. So if Vera Farmiga's in it, it's at least a 3-star film, right? It's got to
Mhm.
have at least that. Patrick Wilson is very good as Ed Warren. Great special effects, well-told story. I guess the only thing I take with a little bit of a grain of salt. Now, you mentioned that you're fans of the Warrens, but I've heard other people say that they feel that they exaggerated their investigations, that maybe they
Mhm.
made up evidence. I don't really know what the true story is. I suspect that quite a bit in this film was exaggerated
Yeah.
from their real life experiences. So we none of us should take this as a biographical film. But based on the story itself that's presented, it is certainly entertaining. It is well executed. It is well done. The first 2 movies I think were great. I think the franchise started to fall off with number 3 and
Mhm.
4, and I think there's still a 5th that's supposed to come out in 2026, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Yeah. Then there's a
So,
new one out right now too at the
yeah,
theater. Yeah.
yeah. So it has like a lot of franchises, it loses steam as you start to, get deeper and deeper, 4, 5, 6 films. But this being the first film,
Mhm.
it is certainly at the top of the list. I'll give it 4 stars as well. You went 4.5. I come close to that at 4. It's it's a film that really shows you what can be done with contemporary horror film techniques.
Mhm.
Special effects, sophisticated acting. In a lot of ways, this film does what good or great ghost films can do in the current day. And under James Wan's leadership, direction, this film really does achieve that. I have to say one thing about the mention of the character Bathsheba. If you have the name Bathsheba, you have to be a witch. Just like if you're named Jeeves, you have to be a butler. So Bathsheba being a witch, that name is perfect for that
Yes.
occupation. But 4 stars, The Conjuring. It's terrific.
Yeah. No, it's a really, really great movie, and, as a matter of fact, all of these movies were so excellent, Bruce, and, there's a couple that I'm gonna have to pick up and watch that I haven't seen, but man, it was a good trip down memory lane for these.
All right, great job, Tracy. Again, the 8 films that we reviewed on this episode include some real classics: The Uninvited, The Haunting, The Legend of Hell House, also Poltergeist, The Sixth Sense, Stir of Echoes, The Ring, The Conjuring. Hopefully, I got all 8 listed there. There could have been many other films that we could have chosen, but again, we wanted to limit it to 8 and give each film a fairly thorough rundown. So that completes the first in our series of creature feature monster movies. We'll be doing more of these. Great idea from Tracy on that. We hope everyone enjoyed our first installment in that area. Tracy, thank you. Great job, and have a good evening.
Oh, you too. Thanks so much, Bruce.
Our thanks to Tracy, our co host and producer. We thank all of our listeners as well for joining us in this Museum of the Macabre. And we do hope you'll be with us next time, right here in the Ghostly Gallery.